أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي واجعل لي وزيرا من أهلي هارون أخي اشدد به أزري وأشركه في أمري كي نسبحك كثيرا ونذكرك كثيرا إنك كنت بنا بصيرا صلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Inshallah, we'll continue on our discussion about Qadar, divine determining, and the power of choice, Juz-i ikhtiyari, and this is our sixth discussion. So I want to give a very quick recap of where we are and where we started from. So we started with these two verses, and there is not a thing but its sources and treasures inexhaustible are with us, but we only send down thereof in due and ascertainable measures. And of all things have we taken account in a clear book. As we were talking about these verses, author established a framework saying that this is not a matter of knowledge or a theoretical discussion, but rather the topic of Qadar is a matter of a belief pertaining to state and conscience. This was important because everything that we discuss is being based on that. Practically speaking, what does that mean? So it means as I am getting convinced about what's going on in this existence, meaning that nothing happens by itself, everything is being created by an all-powerful, all-knowledgeable one, and I realize that sovereignty is only his, so meaning I get rid of all my claims of ownerships and I say everything is from him, everything is from him. And from deep my conscience, I am now pretty sure that the creator is the creator of all things. But then comes the question about, how about bad things? How about responsibility? Okay, for the good things that come out of my hand, they must also be the creation of the creator, and also like the goodwill or like willing to do goodness to others and whatnot. Everything that is beautiful belongs to the creator, comes from the creator, and I can confirm that, and I sense that. But how about the issue when it comes to me having ill will towards someone, let's say, or doing evil things? Who am I going to attribute this to? Meaning, how about the responsibility? So then the author talked about why choosing of evil is evil, but creation of evil is not evil. So long story short, we discussed all about this, but the first topic was really establishing and also solving all the problem about free will and divine knowledge, power of choice and divine knowledge, how it should be situated, or as a believer, what would be the mindset in which, as the Quran describes it, once I fit into that picture, I'm going to be content. So up to the end of the first topic, actually, the topic was concluded. So the purpose of belief in divine determining is actually concluded once we come to the end of the first topic. Now, in the second topic, then what does the author do? Because we started talking about this last week. In the second topic, the author is answering that question: how is divine determining compatible with the power of choice? Because they look like the two are contradictory to each other. Like divine is determining something versus I am choosing something, right? The author is just saying that in here, as far as I understand, and we only studied part of it, and I believe today we will study again partially, probably not finishing it in total. how the two is not contradictory to each other. This is what we will see, or we will try to read. The author is not going to explain, again, the internal mechanics of, to say, divine determining or power of choice. The point in here is, because by my conscience, I already sensed, as we discussed in the first topic, that I cannot attribute any goodness or existence to myself, but evil, which is in its nature non-existence, can be attributed to me. Hence, the responsibility belongs to me. I already feel that. I already sense that. This is why he said it's a belief pertaining to state and conscience. It's not a topic of, it's not a theoretical topic of knowledge, he said at the beginning. So then in the second topic, is he really talking about some theoretical knowledge? Sounds like it is. But now if we place it in the context now, the second topic is just showing that the two are not contradictory to each other. And that's all you need to say. Because otherwise, or actually that's all you can say, not rather you need to say, but you can say. Because if I'm already convinced or have a lot of evidences from within about me being responsible for the bad things, but that I cannot attribute anything good to myself, I already know it as a fact. But then on top of that, it should also not be contradictory to my mind as well. And in the second topic, this is what the author does, as far as I understand, just showing that there is no contradiction between divine determining and power of choice. Last week, we talked about the first, the second, and the third. So there are going to be 7 ways that the author is going to tell us that there is no contradiction here. And actually, they are compatible. So this is how I understand that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is how I understand how is divine determining compatible with power of choice. The question says, how can we take the two at the same time? The author says in the following 7 ways. Okay. And then in the first one, it was talking about the justice and wisdom we observe in the creation. So the creator, the same one who created, who is by the testimony of the creation we know is all just and wise, should be giving or give some power of choice of unknown nature, which is going to be the means of reward and punishment for the men. So we don't know what is the wisdom or how the power of choice is compatible with divine determining. I mean, us not knowing it exactly does not mean that such a thing does not exist. So first of all, if I'm not able to comprehend it, this doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So he is just putting some foundations at the very beginning. And in the second one, he talked about everyone is already sensing some will and choice within themselves. It's through conscience we know that. But we do not know the nature of such choice. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So in the first one, we didn't know the, if I do not know the existence of wisdom or how compatible divine determining and power of choice is, this doesn't mean that such a compatibility doesn't exist. This was the first. In the second one, what we are talking about is me not knowing, if you like, the mechanism or the machinery of power of choice or nature of power of choice. If I do not know that, it doesn't mean it does not exist. And he was saying that there are tons of things out there for which you do not know its true nature, yet you know it exists. So these were very simple 2 premises he established. Then the third, we talked about the third, which was saying that the power of choice is not opposed to divine determining. Indeed, divine determining corroborates the power of choice. And as we were discussing this last time, what remained to me from here was, if you like, as a black box, power of choice is determined for men to have. Like human beings are designed to have such an aspect. So without going into the internal machinery of what the power of choice is, so in the third, the author says, as a black box, because still we are not trying to define how it works internally, but man is meant to have it, or man is, and if you look at the creation of man, without free choice, like the position of man in this existence becomes nonsensical. Like man becomes just another, I don't know, animal. But with power of choice, man becomes this learning entity in the existence. Through choosing right or wrong, actually, we are learning. And this is what makes man different than the rest of the creation. And as such, actually, Quran rightfully starts with, or the first revelation was, read. And right after a few verses, it was saying that اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. So the creator is actually introducing himself to us as the teacher, and man is the learner. This is our position within this existence. And without free will or the power of choice, through which we learn by choosing right and wrong and then comparing the two, the human's existence becomes meaningless, because we are then become more miserable than any animal. Like animals enjoy life, we don't, but we become even worse or lower in the relative to the rest of the existence. But once we take free choice into the picture and see its purpose within the design of human being actually as a tool for teaching, then everything fits into the picture. So this is what I understand from that third. So the fourth, I remember we reading this, but I'm not sure if we finished it. So can anybody remind me to what extent we studied that? Because I feel like I didn't see the full picture of this last time. Okay, so I would suggest starting from the beginning, because there are two very important points in here, if not more. So let me read it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the fourth. Divine determining is a sort of knowledge. Knowledge is dependent on the thing known. That is, it knows it as it is. The thing known is not dependent on knowledge. So the topic is getting tougher. So please help me with the content, with your comments. I'm reading it again slowly. Divine determining is a sort of knowledge. Knowledge is dependent on the thing known. That is, it knows, meaning knowledge knows it as it is. The thing known is not dependent on knowledge. That is, the principles of knowledge are not fundamental so that the knowledge directs the thing known with regard to its external existence. Because the essence of the thing known and its external existence look to, will, and are based on power. The rest is going to be a change in topic. So up to here, the statement has finished. So let me see. Is it clear, or is it? Last week, I remember Aisha and Abdurrahman was making a comment about that, if they would like to explain us what they understood from this sentence, or anybody else. I am reading it again, since I don't see any hands. Divine determining is a sort of knowledge. So author is making a definition here, as if saying that divine determining is not something else. It is knowledge. It is a sort of knowledge. Knowledge is, and then talks about what knowledge looks like. Knowledge is dependent on the thing known. That is, it knows, like, let me put, there are too many it's in the sentence. That is, knowledge knows the object as the object is. Suhail, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. It's probably worthwhile to break it down sentence by sentence, but at least what I took away from the first couple sentences is that divine determining is a sort of knowledge. I think that's straightforward in that nobody can actually, I can't determine anything, or I can't choose or do anything except I know what I'm choosing. Like, it doesn't make sense rationally. Like, how do I choose something if I don't know what the options are? So I know something, that's my knowledge. So there's a distinction between knowledge, in other words, the entity or the being having or knowing something. For example, I know, that I can choose to drink a glass of water or not. That's my knowledge. It's personal. It's dependent on the thing known, meaning I can't have knowledge or the idea of choosing to drink water or not unless there was water that happened to be, there was a glass and it was present before me and I had an idea that a human being could drink water. In other words, the existence or the being of the glass and the water are not, and it being drunk is, their existence is not dependent on me knowing that they exist and that I can drink water. It's irrelevant whether I know it or not, it doesn't matter. But the only way I can know it is because those things exist. And so that doesn't work both ways. That's what I think he says by that is, it knows it as it is. The thing known is not dependent on knowledge. And whereas I think he's also making a distinction. There's a lot of it's, as you said. Divine determining is essentially equivalent to divine knowledge, in that divine knowledge, is not, it's distinct from my ability to know things because it itself does not need something external to it to know it, because it's already within its knowledge, it's absolute. In other words, it doesn't need a glass of water to exist to know that there's a glass of water, or could be a glass of water, and that it could be used to drink for the human being. It already knows it because it's within its own knowledge. It's absolute, it encompasses everything. Those things, whereas my knowledge is dependent on the thing existing. For absolute knowledge, the thing existing is dependent on its knowledge. So it's opposite directions. In other words, the glass of water only exists because he knows it. He knows what it is essentially, whereas I can never know anything essentially. He knows what water is essentially, what is it, and how to create it, and how to give it being, and how to give it a form and a shape, and how to make it in such a way that a human being can drink it. The water doesn't know any of that. It's dependent on him knowing it, and therefore giving it a sort of being and then by doing so, therefore I can know that. I think that's the relationship I think he's alluding to here. And so divine determining is knowledge in and of itself, is a sort of knowledge. It's not like my knowledge, but it is knowledge in the sense that it's a knowing of something, but it's not dependent itself. Its existence or his knowledge is not like it's independent. So I think that's the distinction, because if I read it again, it's confusing with all the it's in the capital and lowercase letters, but I think he's saying divine determining is a sort of knowledge. In other words, you can compare it to human knowledge, but it's not the same. The next sentence, knowledge is dependent on the thing known. I don't think he's talking about absolute knowledge here. I think he's talking about knowledge like my knowledge. Like he's talking about knowledge in the created world. My knowledge is dependent on the water existing. Otherwise, I don't know water exists. I don't know I can drink it unless the water exists and I witness it being drunk. That is, it knows it as it is. In other words, I can only know water as it is because I'm experiencing it. I can't know it independent of water itself existing. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, how do I know something unless it happens to be? The thing known is not dependent. The thing known is not dependent on knowledge. In other words, water's existence is not dependent on me knowing water exists. It exists independently of me knowing it, or what to do with it, or how to use it, or what happens if I drink it. Um, that is, the principles of knowledge are not fundamental so that the knowledge directs the thing known with regards to its external existence. In other words, me knowing something has no bearing, any way, shape, or form on how water happens to be, what is its form, what is its shape, what is its mechanism of action, anything of that sort. Because the essence of the thing known and its external existence look to will and are based on power. And now he's talking about, well, their essence, the essence of their being, them being water, water being as water is, as it is in its entirety, shape, form, color, anything you can think of, any characteristic, human being's relationship with it. That thing is not dependent on water in and of itself. It's not dependent on me knowing it. It's dependent upon a will and a power that gives it those characteristics, that gives it being in that way, beyond the thing itself, beyond water itself. So I'll stop there, but those are what I took away from the beginning sentences.
Jazakallah khair. So yes, the hard part for me here is the first sentence is talking about divine determining is a sort of knowledge. And I'm going to jump over the following sentences, but I'll take it to this sentence that I highlighted over here. But the essence of the thing known and its external existence look to, will, and are based on power. What I understand from here is, within this paragraph, the author is as if saying, divine determining is not of sort of will. Divine determining is not of sort of power. And the external existence of things pertains to, looks to, or comes from, or requires divine will and power. So when we talk about qadar, what we are referring to is knowledge, as if this is what the author is saying. But still, I'm not clear here again, so I'll need your help with that. And also, Suhail is right when he talks about knowledge is dependent on the thing known. This is talking about knowledge that I know of knowledge about. And this is one point. The second point is, can I describe divine knowledge? Since it's absolute, can I describe divine knowledge? And since we are talking about divine determining as knowledge, and without, again, in those discussions, we are avoiding to look at things from God's perspective, right? So what does it mean for me to be able to say that there exists a divine knowledge? And then whatever the author is saying in here is going to be understood as such. So these are my question marks. Because if I am, by those paragraphs, if I am defining what divine determining is, or what God's knowledge is, then by itself, it sounds like it's a contradiction, because if I can define it, then it's not anything that belongs to the divine, because I can give it a shape or a size to it, right? Anything that I define is within my reach and created. So it doesn't work. This being said, I see Suhail's hand again. Go ahead, Suhail.
I don't, maybe I misunderstood your question, but the sentence about because the essence of the thing known and its external sense look to will and are based on power. In some sense, and I may be misinterpreting this, but I think he's also saying uh, divine determining is a sort of knowledge in that just because somebody knows something does not mean that they are going to make a choice based on what they know. Just because water exists um, doesn't mean I have to choose to drink it. Now, if I take the divine perspective, the fact that water exists, it looks to three things at once. It looks to the fact that the water's existence or its essence is known and its characteristics are known essentially by him beyond the water itself. And therefore, not only that, but that based off that knowing of water, uh, he made it be. He created it using his power, his will, power and will, a choice, a choosing based off that knowledge for it to be as it is. So it looks in a sense to all three: knowledge, power. I mean, the water, for example, in this example, looks to knowledge, power, will all together at once at the same time. And that's divine determining. Divine determining is a sort of knowledge, it's a sort of will, a sort of, and what I think he's trying to do is make a comparison to human knowledge. It's a sort of knowledge, it's a sort of power, and a sort of will, but not in the way that human beings know, not in the same way human beings execute things or do things or choose things, but like, so that's what I understood from that.
Brother Birkan?
Just give me a minute and then I will speak, inshallah.
Okay, I gave you the minute. Oh, okay, I understand. Okay, so then let me say how I should not understand this paragraph. Maybe it might also help. Now, a simple example I'm trying to give. Over my table now, there is a green bottle. So me knowing that the bottle is green is not making bottle green. But my knowledge of the color of bottle being green is because my knowledge is dependent on how the bottle is. Knowledge is dependent on the thing known. So the thing known is what? Bottle is green. And my knowledge about bottle is green is because it is green. My knowledge didn't enforce it to become green. It's it being green made me know it as such. I'm reading it from here on, okay? That is, it knows, like I know that it is green because it is green. The thing known is not dependent on knowledge. My knowledge didn't shape it. Its shape made my knowledge, if you like. That is, the principles of knowledge are not fundamental so that the knowledge directs the thing known with regard to its external existence. So far, everything fits into here, right? My knowledge didn't direct its external existence. Then he says, because the essence of the thing known and its external existence look to will and are based on power. Again, I'm going to read this as other than will, other than knowledge, for something to come into existence is required will and power to have this external existence. And somebody knew for this bottle again that it must be green, but that knowledge gave shape to this with its, by willing to give it that shape, gave it that color, and with its power, they made this plastic bottle in green. So this is how I am reading it up to here. But this is very much explaining how things happen for me as a creation. But what does it mean? How do I apply this? Or why does the author give this example or this explanation when we are talking about divine knowledge, not created knowledge? Because Hale was also alluding to that. For human knowledge, yes, exactly the things that are happening right here works fine. And then when he says divine determining is a sort of knowledge, this shouldn't mean that God's knowledge works like this or whatever. I mean, it sounds very funny even speaking it like that. But then what does the author say here? Brother Birkan, please go ahead.
Selamun alaikum. So I'm trying to understand, and I will just share what I could understand so far, but might be mistaken as well. So when I think when author says divine determining is a sort of knowledge, it means when we think about divine determining, the way we understand divine determining is the same way we understand knowledge. So the question was how divine determining and power of choice are compatible, how they can, let's say, exist together. And the conflict between the two, the apparent conflict between the two is for human beings. We think or we assume our mind, our logic suggests at the first, let's say, read, at the first look, that whatever we understand from divine determining is not compatible with whatever we understand with our power of choice. I guess we can all agree on that, right? Otherwise, the contradiction is not like as if we studied God and we have certain understanding of God and we say that there's something there which contradicts. It's not like that. It is more about our perception, our understanding of divine determining and our understanding of the power of choice. And from the beginning, author is studying the topic at this level. It says, you know, the power of choice exists. How do we know? Because we know it. This is our experience. So we are studying power of choice as it manifests, as it manifests itself through our experience. This is what we are studying. We are not studying power of choice as a theoretical construct. We are not studying divine determining same way, not as a theoretical construct. We're studying both as they manifest themselves through our experience. So I will repeat then the first sentence. The power of choice, the divine determining is sort of a knowledge. It means this is how we experience it. When I say divine determining, I mean God knows what happens. I know God, I think I know God knows what will happen. This is divine determining for me. Or whatever happens in front of me, it happens within a scope of knowledge, that it's not random. It fits together. It has a wisdom in it. What is before, what is after, what is above, what is below, makes sense. They come together, they constitute something meaningful. This is divine determining, right? How I understand divine determining. So the rest, like I'm trying to understand why author is saying divine determining is a sort of knowledge, and how this explains the divine determining is compatible with power of choice. So what I could understand so far, and again, this begs a lot of questions. Please help me. Author is telling this because the contradiction stems from our thinking that if I'm choosing something, if the power of choice is there, but at the same time, if everything I do, everything I choose, everything I see is known by the divine determining, through the divine determining, then it seems there's a conflict there. If if there is divine determining, there is no room for power of choice. But author says, no, this is not true. Yes, he knows, but because he knows something, it doesn't mean that this knowledge creates it. Again, from my perspective, author says, just because your choices are known, your actions are known, it doesn't mean that this knowledge is creating your actions or your choices. Your power of choice is there, hence it is known. If it was not there, there was nothing to know at all. So the idea of divine determining, as I take it as a knowledge, does not contradict the existence of power of choice, because the existence of power of choice is not determined by the knowledge, by the divine determining. So this is so far what I understand. And it is also really nice. The author says the existence, it looks at the will and power. Combine them, it is power of will, power of choice. So as if it's saying that when you experience your power of choice, what you experience there, it looks to divine power. It looks to divine will. With your power of choice, you are experiencing a manifestation of divine power and divine will. But not the divine knowledge. And the divine knowledge, as I experience, yes, it knows about the power of choice. And it, again, it support the existence of power of choice, because if power of choice was not there, there was nothing to be known.
I think an important question to ask here is, in terms of power of choice, the black box being known, this was mentioned in the third, but how about the choices that the power of choice does? So them being known, if I take the point that is being made at the fourth point here as what I'm going to choose is known, and I'm going to use the word within quotation, ahead of time. Does it enforce me to choose it? This is the question, right? Like, can I say that, oh, I killed this person, or I chose to kill this person because God knew that I was going to choose to kill that person? Is that knowledge really enforcing me to make such a choice? As if, yeah, go ahead.
I interject, just I will say something very simple.
Okay.
And this may sound like a lazy answer, even let's say coward answer, but I think the real answer, whatever it is in the direction that whatever you just said, I think it's not Quranic. An author, it seems to me that it will explain it. So the next part, when he says the future, or I don't have the English, unfortunately, in front of me, so I don't, eternity, what is what he says, the next part, you stop, pre-eternity.
Yeah, pre-eternity. Yeah.
Stole my book, so I'm just looking at the Turkish. He says the pre-eternity is not the continuation of the past and so on. So anyway, the author will correct slowly, step by step, our understanding of the reality. He will introduce the Quranic understanding of eternity, Quranic understanding of past and future, and so on. What you just said, you know, the God knew ahead of time what I'm going to do. And so this is not Quranic, as I like, this is how I feel. It is stems, this such questions or such concepts that you just shared. And I don't say, I'm not saying that, you know, you believe what you said, you were just giving examples. These examples that we all use, you know, the same questions in my mind as well. But because our understanding, the basis of things is so skewed in our minds, coming from other ideologies, coming from other religions, coming from other philosophical discussions, we using their terminology, their definitions to try to understand something Quranic. So that was the reason I was insisting, for instance, that we shouldn't use free will. We should use power of choice, juz ihtiyari. Because when we say free will, the word free is not Quranic. Because nothing free of the Creator. There's no such thing. There is an experience of choice. There is an experience of power that I have, but nothing is free from the Creator. So again, this is not an answer to your questions, but I believe that these questions that I also share, again, please don't take it as a personal attack. This is the questions that we all share. They need to be deconstructed first so that we see that their bases are skewed. And so we should let Quranic wisdom, an author will try this, inshallah, Quranic wisdom fill our mind, and we have a better understanding of what future, what past, what will, what power is. Jazakallah khairan.
Thank you. Yes. So I agree. So the point here is, and again, yes, this pre-eternity part, we're going to come to that. But this is generally our question, and this is where we think the contradiction happens. And also, even as I was trying to say how not to read this text, if I am imagining my choices entering into the knowledge of the Creator, let's say, then again, I am imagining knowledge of Creator as something like my knowledge. I learn something that I didn't know. You tell me, and then I learn. So these are the things that I shouldn't be taking all whatever is being presented in here as such. So inshallah, we will keep reading and see how to take it. Sister Saira, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Jazakallah khair. I do see that the way this set of reflection is written by Imam Nursi, it talks about the divine determining from the perspective of cognition. And we all know the concept of metacognition. And indeed, with Allah Ta'ala, nothing under meta is hidden. So when I hear and read pre-eternity talk and mentioning of what precedes what in sequence, I recognize that free will is not incompatible and also not contradicting at times. Because if we are true believers, then Allah Ta'ala has already shown us the pathway through Quran and Sunnah. And so there is a parallel construction always going on in Quran where Allah Ta'ala is questioning rhetorically, don't you think, don't you believe, don't you realize, don't you see, haven't you gone and seen the ones destroyed before you? He's giving evidence while he's convincing. He doesn't need convincing anybody, but he's giving literally convincing arguments to prophets and to the readers of the Quran that hence I created the seven heavens. I created everything. There is nothing in the world that is not known, not known to me. I know where it begins. I know where it lands. I know where somebody dies. I know how much risk I have given to someone. Messengers help me, not help me, but take my orders to govern my al-mulk, the whole malkiyat of Allah Ta'ala, all the universes. And so for a human mind to compose this articulation that my free will is either despairingly helpless in front of Allah Ta'ala's already known fate that he has tied to me, or that now knowing the choices that are either wrong or right, I'm still going to make the wrong choices. That is the little crevice where I think our free will is not, of course, superordinate on divine determination, but can certainly fall in line with what, to the best of our knowledge, Allah Ta'ala will accept. And again, Allah knows best that even when you do the right things, that's why that hadith is there, that we have to constantly ask for istighfar because we don't know if Allah Ta'ala is happy with us in that sense. Even if we are doing all the right things, our fate depend upon is His mercy. And so when in kafar or in munafiq or in mushrik, Allah Ta'ala in times of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life shares again and again by referring to different people in the past, different nations in the past, different groups and different other prophets or messengers who came before him, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that had I willed, I would have destroyed, but I gave them time. Had I willed, I would have turned everybody into kafar. Had I willed, I would have made all of them lose their way or come into the right way. But He doesn't. So to me, Allah Ta'ala's divine wisdom is like an open secret. And you and I are to decode it based on Quran in our life situations and the trials, the masiba, the hikmah, the blessings that Allah Ta'ala gives us, because He tells us again and again, sabr and shukr. So without sabr and shukr, we are impatient and we are anxious. Allah Ta'ala says that in Quran. If I am impatient because I want to know something, and even Allah Ta'ala explicitly says that don't ascribe things to me that you have no knowledge of. So just this evening even, something came to my mind and I said, no, Nauzbillah, why am I thinking like this? And the thought is that Allah Ta'ala, you have all the options, you can help me, so please help me. So even like a hint of alluding that it's not like you can't do it, why aren't you doing it for me? And so He knows what path as His maid I am going to choose. And He has given me the path of haqq and righteousness versus the possibility that I could make wrong decisions in my life for a variety of decisions that I may encounter with work, with personal life, with my spirituality, thinking about other people, finances, whatever it is. And so constantly, we as believers, women and men, we have this symbiosis that we are chasing. Because that's why Allah Ta'ala says in Quran, compete so that you can see for yourselves that your iman is true. Believers would know reflectors would realize. People of tafakkur are going to recognize. And so to me, divine guidance based on this reading, divine determination is still, because Allah Ta'ala is Rahim and Kareem, He didn't just leave us blind. He didn't say, here you are a free radical, go find an orbit. He gave us Quran, He gave us Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, then He said, go play your game. See, suit up. You have to have discipline, you have to have a sense of integrity, you have to have pure ikhlas, you have to have taqwa, and then see where your free will takes you. And then so many ayat that constantly are guiding us to, don't you see who is making these the vegetation grow, and the life cycle of the vegetation, or the human baby in the womb, or different stages of life, nisyan, forgetting and not forgetting, knowing and not knowing, deliberately falsifying versus truth. Why emphasis on truth? Allah doesn't say go seek truth beyond your capacity, but says that the truth that you are given, be able to resolutely show that you can believe it rather than deny it. And in this context, the truth is there is an afterlife, there is an accountability, there is a predestiny. And yet, regardless of what free willingness I and you have, our fates are with Allah. That is locked, that is unknown. The time when we die, the time when we come to this earth, what might happen, how we might live, nobody knows. In a split second, something good can happen to me, or something terrible can happen to me right this very second, or split second. And so I cannot possibly have free will in those circumstances. For instance, how will I die? Who is going to take care of my final rites? Where I might die? And what are the situations in which I have to make decisions prior to dying? And not to take a morbid example, but that's why free will is around make your will, keep up your promises, make sure that you are doing fair distribution of your assets, make sure you can pay your debts, not accumulate debts, have backup plans for witnesses so that nobody can tamper with your will. And then Allah Ta'ala's will, that how dignified would my ending be and return be. And that's why the other day I was reading, I forget now which surah it is, Allah Ta'ala says, to me, it's known what you take forward and what you leave behind. And I'm going to ask you what you used to do. I guess there are layers to the cognition of Allah Ta'ala. If there was a bigger word than metacognition, of course, that's for Him only. And the bird's eye view perspective is true, that the mirror is like you're lopsided, and you're probably going to have a blind spot in your life now, because we are thinking and looking in the temporality of our existence as we are living. But in the grand scheme of things, how Allah Ta'ala sees us as threads with knots, as a metaphor that I'm taking, how we get to address some of those knots in ourselves, our flaws, our stubbornness, our denial. And then inshallah, when our time comes, we'll have a golden thread of a life that Allah Ta'ala can accept. And so I think free will is not contradicting and not subordinate. It's by design, ideally, for a believer, as I understand, is supposed to function as an aligned behavior to Allah Ta'ala's predetermination. And then the last of the last determination, that where we will end in eternity, that lies with Him. And that's also in one of the surahs, that no soul knows what will happen. I think it's in Surah Miraj. no soul would know what is its sense. But again, taqwa is your test. Truth, believing is your test. If you are free willingly doing so, rest is up to Allah, how His rahmah will fall on us. Jazakallah khair. I hope I made sense.
Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. Abdurrahman and Aisha Nur, please go ahead. Your mic is off. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Assalamu alaikum. I'll try to keep it brief. I just had a few comments to make on this paragraph. One, I think just looking at this text as a whole, you know, what is this, the 26th word? Okay, yeah. You know, when he was introducing this word to us, this topic to us, he did it in relation to the human being. That the function of divine determining qadar is that it puts a limit, if you will, to human beings and reminds us that we don't own anything, that we can't create anything. And so there's always that, and this is just adding on to some of the comments that have already been said. This has to constantly, this topic, I guess, constantly has to be situated in relation to me as a human being. It has to be anchored to my human experience. That's one comment I wanted to make. The second comment I wanted to make is that when we're talking about this, because I had this sort of conversation with Abdurrahman here as well, and one of the things that was raised was, you know, he's talking about divine knowledge here, but that's not the same thing as divine determining. So is it really answering anything? And I was thinking that the question that he's also trying to tackle in this specific part of the text is whether divine determining is compatible with power of choice, whether how I can make that feasible to my human mind. It's not about describing the essence, if you will, of divine determining or the nature of divine determining, but rather to explain a small aspect of it that looks to me and that might sit comfortably within me. And so here I think, you know, in this specific first half of the paragraph that we've read, I think that he's specifically using human knowledge as a mechanism or a prism, if you will, through which we can understand potentially the logic of how divine determining might work, right? Because there is such a thing as human knowledge, and so it's a function, if you will, that I can make sense of, but there's no such thing as like human determining. I don't have access to that. And the moment I start speaking from God's perspective, anything that I say becomes speculative and it doesn't become anchored in my human experience. And frankly, like a lot of discussions about free will and determining and all that sort of stuff are completely speculative because they always end up trying to speak theoretically from God's perspective. And then that becomes completely alienated from how I experience things because I can't ever confirm or reject it. I just simply don't have access to that. So I think here, the part that looks to us, or the part that we can try to make sense of, is using my own understanding of how my knowledge works, how I can try to understand divine determining through the prism of human knowledge. So I wanted to say that, and I think the second half of the paragraph is also going to be highlighting a really important point, which is that we can't really talk about divine determining without talking about temporality and time. And I think that situates the whole topic even more so comfortably. But that's all I wanted to say. Okay. Thank you, Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. So then, very good points. So then let me read the rest, and then inshallah we will consider the whole thing together, inshallah, once more. Up to here, we discussed it in depth, so I continue from here. Also, pre-eternity is not the tip of a chain reaching into the past, which should be considered the end point in the existence of things and a source of compulsion. So the word compulsion is really the crux of the matter in here, because I feel like if I'm imagining knowledge of the creator to be a far end of the early times. And at that time, I was determined to choose or compulsed to choose this certain thing. So this is how I am understanding it. Reading it again, pre-eternity is not the tip of a chain reaching into the past, which should be considered the end point in the existence of things and a source of compulsion. But rather, pre-eternity holds the past, the present, and the future all at once, looking at them from above like a mirror, in which case it is not right to imagine an end to past time which stretches back within the sphere of contingency and call it pre-eternity, and to suppose that things enter that knowledge of pre-eternity in sequence, and that oneself is outside it, to reason as such or thus is not right. So just very briefly, what I understood from here is, since we are talking about like divine determining is the eternal knowledge of the creator, but what I mean by eternal knowledge of the creator of the existence, if I imagine this like, oh, I determined what this building is going to look like from 2 years ago. I made the design and everything. And then that building is made up of by my choice, by my design, right? And then in that setup, I'm imagining some free agent, quote unquote, in that building for which I allow for that thing to behave on itself. Again, all this speech that I'm making doesn't make any sense because I'm looking at it from God's perspective and I'm imagining God to be something like human, right? So all what I'm saying doesn't make any sense. But the reason we think as such is why we think there's a contradiction between divine determining and free will, as Brother Birkan was pointing to. So the author here is saying that if I think it like that, like imagine pre-eternity to be one extreme in the past, and then suppose that things enter to that knowledge in sequence, and then myself is outside of that. Like my choices are outside of that. So I choose, and that's outside of God's knowledge, or God knows everything else, but not me, sort of a thing. This is pretty much a contingent picture that I'm drawing, which it has nothing to do with the absolute creator. Consider the following example in order to explain this mystery. Suppose there is a mirror in your hand, and the area to your right is the past, and the area to your left is the future. The mirror only holds what is opposite it, what is just next to it. Then with a movement, it holds both sides, but it cannot hold all of it. Like if I move a little forward, I will start to see that the mirror is going to show what is right to my right, what is to my left. However low the mirror is held, less will appear in it. And the higher it rises, the area it encompasses expands until it can hold both sides in their entirety simultaneously. Whatever occurs in the areas reflected in the mirror in this position cannot be said to precede or follow one another, or to conform to or oppose one another. So the example that's being said in here is, as if I have a mirror at my hand, and I am just looking at the mirror at my, let's say, arm's distance. And right now I am standing in front of this wall. So what I see in the mirror is my face and a little to my right and a little to my left. Just let's say 1 meter's distance is apparent here. Then I start walking. Still the mirror is within the same distance to my face, but then the things that are to my right and to my left keeps encompassing a larger distance. Like in Philadelphia, if I'm in front of the art museum, as I keep walking farther away from art museum, the entire art museum is going to fit into that mirror to my left. And then Schuylkill River is going to fit into the same mirror on the right. So this is what it says. However low the mirror is held, less will appear in it. And the higher it rises, I mean, I can also imagine it to be, I'm on the ground and I'm just going higher. The area it encompasses expands until it can hold both sides in their entirety simultaneously. So this part, whatever occurs in the areas reflected in the mirror in this position cannot be said to precede or follow one another, or to conform to or oppose one another. So why did he give this example? Because in this example, he replaced our perception of space with time. Divine determining is part of pre-eternal knowledge, and in the words of the hadith, pre-eternal knowledge is at an elevated station which from its lofty viewpoint encompasses everything that has been and will be from pre-eternity to post-eternity. We and our reasoning cannot be outside of it, so we can be like a mirror to the area of the past. Okay, so this last sentence, we and our reasoning cannot be outside of it, like this pre-eternal, post-eternal knowledge, so we can be like a mirror to the area of the past. I don't think this proper translation would be we and our reasoning cannot be outside of it, so if we take it as such, then it could be like a mirror to the area of the past. Okay, Abdurrahman Mashana, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll just start with my comment. I think this paragraph really brings up things a lot better, like together in my mind. The whole discussion of pre-eternity, and he's giving the example of a mirror, and he's basically explaining absoluteness, or the fact that this thing we call time, it's not absolute. Time is a part of the creation. Time is something we're living and we're experiencing. It's been created for us, but it's not like time is absolute by itself and that it encompasses everything, and God also functions in it. Even I guess I'll mention this because I read it recently, but like science, it's since the last 100 years or so, science also agrees, and it's proven that time is created, and there's relativity, and it's not absolute. Time and space, they're not absolute. Well, I guess it's not proven that time is created by them, but it is proven in other ways. But they accept that time is not absolute at the end of the day, and that just makes things so much clearer. And here it's like talking about the mirror, but he's comparing how divine determining is a sort of divine knowledge, and how divine knowledge is absolute, or it can't be defined in terms of like time or what we're living in right now. So it makes sense that when I say that an absolute creator, I can't say pre-eternal. I can't say like my past or my future. Like obviously, since time doesn't exist for the creator, or whatever is not bound by time, then there is no past and future. So it would be meaningless to say if he knows my past, or if they know my past, then, or if they know my future, then it blocks my will or something. And I see what I'm understanding from this paragraph is that he's saying that divine determining is something similar to this divine knowledge. So just as divine knowledge is absolute, and how it can be outside the bounds of time, and how somehow it can know my future and my past, but it also it doesn't block my free will from acting. In the same way, divine determining is like this divine knowledge, in that it doesn't block you from acting or using your free will. And just like off what other comments were made, I think like this is a comparison he's drawing, and it makes it more clear for me if I understood correctly.
Jazakallah khair. So let me try to summarize what I see, and you correct me, inshallah. So I see that there are two major points the author makes in here. The first one is about knowledge, or qadar, divine determining, being knowledge, but not power or will. Correct me, I might be wrong. And the second one is, when we talk about divine knowledge, we are not talking about knowledge of some ancient time. And we are not talking about learning, like some knowledge that increases in amount, or some knowledge that resides in the past. Because if I think it as such and take divine determining or divine plan, if you like, as some plan that's made ahead of time meaning in the past, and then this plan that was made in the past is enforcing me to do something, this is like contradictory with the reality. So it doesn't make any sense. But such thoughts are really what makes me think that, what leads me to contradiction, saying that, well, then how about choice? So what I'm understanding here is the author is saying that this understanding of yours is leading you to those contradictions. So let's clear these understandings up. Divine knowledge or eternal divine knowledge, or eternal divine knowledge is not some past thing. So we are talking about an eternal knowledge that is holding or looking at within the same distance, if you like, to past, present, and future, which is again unimaginable to me. Now I'm trying to think about, why would I arrive to such a conclusion, right? When I look at the creation, when I look at the particles, when I look at the DNA of human, what does this lead me to say? It leads me to say that, oh, how wise the creator is, how all-knowing the creator is. Look at this DNA sequence, how this is created by taking all the particles into account, by taking everything in this existence into account. Like an all-encompassing knowledge must exist, as I am observing it's being manifested in this partial DNA sequence, right? This is how I conclude to that. Now, our question right now is, how about the choices that I take in this life? Because if you think about your life story, your choices looks like another DNA sequence. And at the end of your life, another book is going to be written and concluded. My life is another book that is being written and concluded, pretty much like the DNA sequence of, I don't know, a mice. So the question that we are right now talking about in here is, when it pertains to the incorrect choices that I make, are those choices written by me, or are they determined and enforced on top of me? So this is the main question we are trying to answer in here. An author in here is talking about, if you imagine your choices being made different than how the DNA sequence is done, and how when you look at the DNA sequence of that mouse or that bacteria, whatever, how perfectly it fits the rest of the creation, you say that, oh, the one who created the entire thing has made this. So when it comes to my choices, though, I start thinking about it like, oh, somebody from behind or from past is enforcing it on me. So this is where the contradiction is happening, apparently. And still, I'm not clear. I'm just trying to find a way out. Suhail, please go ahead, help me.
Assalamu alaikum. No, I just kind of want to add it on to what you were saying, and then, previously I should know Ambir Khan. I think the first sentence of the paragraph kind of, to me, sums up what you were all saying. Divine determining is a sort of knowledge, in that people's confusion, like my confusion, if I say that, as he says, my choice is already known, and therefore, because it's already known, this is the reasoning, the false reason. It's not really reasoning. It's just incorrect apprehension of what's happening, understanding. If something is known, therefore, it was determined for me to do it. The issue is, and as he makes this whole analogy between the mirror and myself in the mirror. If I compare myself my knowing or choosing to his knowing and choosing, that's where the issue is. Because it's as if it's bringing his knowledge, his divine absolute knowledge, eternal from pre to post eternity, as he says, into my sphere of contingency. He uses that phrase quite often, sphere of contingency, is to bring absolute knowledge into sphere of contingency. That by definition is a contradiction. And that's the issue, is because when I say, oh, he's imposing his choice onto me, by right then is trying to bring him down into creation, down into the sphere of contingency, bring his knowledge. Whereas there are two distinct realms. You know, I don't know what he calls, not the sphere of contingency, but I don't know if it's sphere of pre and post eternity. I don't know what word he uses to contrast it, but he makes that point, is that I'm trying to describe divine knowledge using my own created understanding of the world. And that is false. Because divine knowledge by definition does not have any subject, it's not subjected to time. It is beyond time. And as like Abdurrahman says, you know, time is not absolute. And therefore, in reality, space is not absolute either, because if time's not absolute, neither is space. The two coexist. You can't talk about one from the other. And so I can't bring absolute knowledge down into my sphere of contingency, my reference point, and then say, oh, he's imposing, he knows what I'm going to choose, and therefore he's chosen it for me, and therefore I have no choice. That is starting from a false premise. Whereas, like as you were saying, you know, like Norsi's methodology, he always begins with the point of reference being me first, and then coming to a conclusion, saying that I look to my experience or who I am, and that I know things. I'm able to choose things based off what I know. And what I know doesn't, if I use myself, what I know does not necessarily determine that I'm going to choose something. But it's my power and will that make a choice. Now, this is in my sphere of contingency, I don't create, but it's an analogy in order to know him. And so using my point of reference, therefore, I know that he too must know, and that he too must choose and determine things, you know, using his knowledge. But then to make that jump to say, oh, then his knowledge is imposing upon me, is then that's you're trying to, it's incorrect use of that sort of methodology, because there's no, you're jumping to his station and coming and making up a story without any sort of reference point in the world. Like there's no reference point for that. I have no reference point to say that he chose something for me and therefore I have no choice. I have no reference point for that. I only exist in the mirror, and the only thing I can do is use the mirror or use myself in my experience and make a conclusion. I don't have any reference point or evidence to say that he chose something for me, or he determined, as in he made my choice for me. There's no such thing. That's just my speculation. That's just my sort of imagination. It has no reality whatsoever. But using myself and using myself in this world, I make a conclusion as to, yes, he must determine things to be in a way that I can't, and he must have knowledge, and that's it. And his knowledge and his power will transcend everything beyond this world, beyond the nature of space and time. And I think that's why his emphasis is on knowledge, because, you know, if you get caught up, I mean, just, you know, if you focus on power and will, I guess maybe that somebody may say, it doesn't, maybe, I mean, not that it doesn't encompass that it doesn't speak to being beyond the nature of the world, but there's something about knowledge which makes it look more obvious that his power and will are not of the nature of this world. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but knowledge gives it a little bit more substance in my mind, that it's not just power and will that are determining things, but his knowledge is beyond, his power and will are beyond the nature of this world, just as his knowledge is. And the knowledge, and for me, it's something much, I can comprehend a little bit more, that he can know all past, present, future possibilities. Because if I just focus on power and will, then it just seems like there is a God saying, do this, do this, do this. With just as kind of as it is, and I have no choice or I have no will. So, I mean, that's kind of how I summed it up, this section or fourth point.
Jazakallah khair. This is an important point. Actually, it reminds me of another topic. So a more generalized topic. I say I do exist, right? And then I say, since I exist within knowledge, wisdom, whatever, I say there must exist a creator as well. If I fall into the mistake of comparing my existence with the creator's existence, the same problem occurs in there, because now I feel like I am occupying some space, right? And now I am talking about some absolute existence. If what I mean by existence is something similar to that, and I am occupying part of the space, and then if where I occupy is not divine, then divine is somewhere outside of here, which means the divine is also limited in some sense because he is not here. And actually, this is what I think when you would start thinking about wahdatul wujud. This is when you would say either I don't exist or that everything that exists is he. The same idea, when I apply to knowledge, if I compare my knowledge with creator's knowledge, start comparing them as if they are of the same type, then I'm going to fall into this contradiction. If I am making sense. So how do you solve this problem then? Let's think about it. How do you solve the problem when it's about the existence? So I do not speculate about how the creator exists or what is the nature of God's existence and whatnot, or even I do not compare my existence versus creator's existence, because these are all irrelevant things actually. I cannot make any comments about that. So the only thing I can say is I do exist, therefore there must exist a necessarily existent one who creates me, who gives existence to me. That's all my existence tell me about his existence. Now, fast forward, my knowledge and the knowledge that I observe in the existence, what does it tell me about the source of this knowledge? So inevitably, I say that the one who gives existence to this, like I made a horrible choice yesterday, let's say, but I see that everything is unfolding where this horrible choice is fitting into the picture. Like within the whole existence, it perfectly makes sense. Therefore, I say, oh, the all-knowing one is aware of all my choices in the past and the future, not only my choices, but whatever I consider to be natural or by chance is also within that knowledge. That I can conclude. But if I take my knowledge and his knowledge, or my choices and his choices at the same order, or not even at the same order, but try to relate the two, then this is where I am inevitably going to fall into those contradictions. And I think in this fourth point, the author is telling us two things. The first one is we are talking about knowledge here, not the external existence, like the will and the power gives external existence. So the first thing that throws you off is I am mixing knowledge with power and will, but not only that, I am also taking the knowledge to be something in the past. What that means is I take knowledge like my knowledge. So this being the case, these two are throwing me off. So in here, the author is kindly telling me that don't compare your knowledge, don't compare your choice to creator's knowledge and choice. This is beyond your duty. I mean, you cannot do that anyways. So, and doing this is putting you into trouble. And I don't know if this Wahdat al-Wujud part is becoming explanatory, but it clarifies things for me, because in general, what I see as a problem here is as if, like if I ask again a more general question, as if we are trying to understand metaphorically, take this, what I'm saying as metaphor, how God's hand of power, God's hand of knowledge touches the existence that I am in. This is a metaphorical explanation, referring to this painting that there's this God above the clouds and just holding his finger, and that human is trying to touch that finger, right? There was such a picture. Actually, this is what we are trying to imagine forcefully, as if we are saying that, yeah, the creator is giving existence to me, is giving existence to particle. From his hand, how does it come out? This is beyond what I can do. This is where I am failing. And actually, trying to imagine this will lead me to say that everything is here, or nothing exists but he is the only way out if I will try to imagine this. But Nursi is not getting into that path. He says, this is nonsense. You cannot talk about that. Don't go that path. What you can do is look at your existence and arrive to your necessary conclusions. That's all you can do. So sorry for that long part, brother. I saw your hand. We started 10 minutes late, so we have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Jazakallah khairan. So I would only add to what you said, what Suhail said, is, so yes, it's a mistake to talk about the God's actions and properties and so on. But even before that, I guess what author is doing here, he is also feeling the inside of our experiences as well. So even before going to, understand something about the creator, he says, first of all, what you understand from divine determining qadar and how you experience it. So again, I'm repeating, how you experience qadar is not the way the Western philosophy taught you, is not the way that you are taught in schools, in mathematics classes or physics classes. This is not the way you experience qadar. I will teach you, I will reteach you, that I will open your eyes that how you experience qadar. So I'm not sure if I'm clear that what you said, Yusuf, for instance, is assuming that I have a right understanding of how I experience qadar in my life. It is right. It is true one, my understanding. And then I'm trying to extend it to the creator and making the mistake. So this is one kind of mistake. But I guess mistakes doesn't start from there. It starts from the very beginning. That when I use word qadar, within the sphere of my experience, the sphere of contingency, when I use word qadar, what I mean is wrong. What I mean is not the way I experience it. And author is correcting it. He says, the qadar, the way you experience qadar is a kind of knowledge. And when you ask yourself, whatever happens, whether in past or future, doesn't matter. Whatever happens, it goes to the creator. It is there as a part of a wisdom, a part of a meaning. This is how you understand, right? He says. It is known. This is how you understand qadar. So from now on, he says, when I say qadar, understand this. do not understand as if, there was a written book at the beginning of the time. There was a DNA sequence at the beginning of the time, and everything unfolding according to it. Don't take it that way, because this is not how you understand, how you experience. Only thing you experience is, there's a kind of knowledge, and everything happens in my life following this the knowledge. It is known. It is not by itself floating in the air. So this is what we mean with the qadar from Naval. So he corrects a more fundamental error. Yes, it somehow relates to what you said as well. But even before that, he corrects something, because we pretend as if we know what we mean with the word qadar and word choice, and word power and word will. We pretend as if we know what we mean, but in reality, we use them so loosely, and most of the time borrowing the ideas from other teachings, and we try to come up with a formal understanding of something. So Otto says, don't do that. So far, we only studied what we should understand from qadar. To some extent, very small part of it. He will step by step build what we should understand, how we should use the word choice as well, for instance. He will say, wait a second, I see another problem there. I see a problem the way you use the words cause and effect. Let's correct them as well. And let's correct them in the scope of knowledge, divine determining. So let's be okay with this. Let's accept this offer of the author. So let's not use the word choice, for instance, for now. We haven't studied yet. Because when you say choice, you mean the same thing with a Western philosopher. Although you studied this text, hundreds of times, like us, we still mean the same thing, because we never let author and Quran transformed our understanding, transformed our use of words and the language, and also our mind. So this time, let author do his job. For now, we only studied a part of qadar, what we should understand. He will build on top of this. But let's be patient. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah khairan. Yes, so topic is not easy, because as you said, it looks like we have a long way to go in terms of unlearning, because our preconceived notions is hard to replace with how Quran is teaching it to us. So may Allah help us with that, inshallah. And so just one point still growing too big on me. When I say I, what do I mean by that? Can I imagine my existence independent of the Creator in all meanings of the word independent? So I think this might help us maybe get a little nearer, because this is a very existential question on the basis of getting to know me and him, the Creator. So maybe it can define us some framework for where I cannot go beyond. And the same thing would apply for our current topic as well. With that, inshallah, let's stop here. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Wa akhiru da'wana